Every student has brilliance waiting to be unleashed, but oftentimes systemic barriers, low expectations, or a lack of support hold students back from what they're destined to be able to achieve. In this episode, James O'Neill Jr., a good friend, brother of mine, joins us to share how educators and leaders can intentionally empower every single student to uncover their potential and create environments where brilliance isn't unknown, isn't the exception, but it's the expectation for learning. Welcome to another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle King, and the goal of this podcast is to help you create an ecosystem of academic excellence. Through inspiring conversations, practical strategies, and actionable insights, we empower educators, leaders, and change makers just like yourself, foster trust, collaboration, and provide them with the tools to ultimately create this ecosystem of academic excellence. James, how you doing, brother?
Man, I'm doing good. What's going on, Kyle? How are you?
Man, I'm amazing, man. It's good to hear from you and see you. I know that when we're filming this episode, you are finally back home for once. I feel like every time I see you, you're in another place in the country or the world. Talk to
Yeah.
us about what you've been doing and like how you're impacting educators, but then also students around the country.
Yeah. It's funny because the work has been work and then play, work then play. So I've been doing both both travel lately.
For sure.
But yeah, my work really encompasses what all students can do by centering the brilliance of our Black boys. So I know, and I'm a former math teacher. I taught for 15 and a half years. I take that half a year because I literally took over a classroom of a teacher who was going to retire. And I started off in a place where nobody wanted to go. And literally mid-year, I took over a classroom and helped those kids grow. But it was boot camp. When I tell you, I wouldn't want no one to enter a classroom like that. Like mid-year, they had been learning. I'm sitting in the back of the classroom, like, I don't know why I'm doing here, but ain't nobody hiring, so I got to take this job. So it was one of those things. And so I literally started at just square one, trying to understand how can I get kids to learn? How can I get them to learn math? They haven't been doing this all year long. And what do I need to do as a fresh, not even 1 year teacher, just a beginning teacher to enter a classroom and convince kids that math is everything and, and they should pick up their pencil and let's solve some equations and let's
No,
figure
literally.
So it's what I do now. My business, Mastery for All, really supports the mastery of mathematics teaching by providing professional development, coaching, and consulting in the space of mathematics. I do some culture work as well, but that's what I'm excited to do to support educator leaders around the country now.
Before we get into all of the math strategies that you have to be able to enhance the educators as well as the leaders that listen into the show, can you share your journey in education and I guess what inspired you to really focus on empowering every student that you come across?
Yeah, so my journey starts as a little boy in a little small town, Belhaven, North Carolina, 252 area code. I don't know if anybody from the 252 is listening, but small town, 2,000 people. Everybody knows everybody. You're related to half the people in the town, and there wasn't just not a lot of expectation for little black boys in the South, in this area, in this small town. We were pretty much told if we don't play sports and if you don't go into the military, there's no other pathway that seemed to be at grabs or attainable for me growing up. But I was someone that always loved to learn. My mom used to tell me I used to love reading books and everything. I don't remember way back then, but she used to tell me that I used to love learning, and that's something that I wanted to do. I love being right. At one time, I thought I was going to be a lawyer because I just love arguing my point. And so when I learned about math and I learned how to check my own work to make sure I was right, man, you didn't tell me nothing. I was like, I know I'm right because I checked my work. I just I was that nerd that just was like, I want to make sure I'm right. And so I used to always tutor my friends growing up. And my friends just happened to be other Black males because that was what I had in the community. And I just had a love for just making sure that what the expectation for us, and it's weird, but when you get older and you look back at your journey, it'd be like, this is what I was destined to do. Like one of my friends used to tell me, I went back home like some years ago, and he was like, do you remember you used to ask us to see our progress report?
What?
I used to literally ask my friends, I'm like, let me see how you doing in everybody's class. And I used to get on them like, that's not how we represent. And we got to show excellence. And it's crazy that he reminded me of that. So that desire to see the person that usually that has low expectations, but knowing that we could all do it, that desire has always been in me. And so when one day I went to my guidance counselor and she was like, so what do you want to do? You want to go to college? I was like, yeah. What do you want to do? And I was like, I don't know yet. She said, there's this teaching fellow scholarship. And I was like, teaching? I was like, listen, I'm in a trailer park now. Like, ain't no world I'm gonna be a teacher. Y'all talking about y'all struggling, y'all don't get paid to go to school to get out the struggle. But she told me that the scholarship was worth $40,000, and I was like, back, and it's not back in the day because I'm clearly not that old, but back in 2002 when I graduated, I have a 2 in front of the year, but when I graduated high school, $40,000 stretched longer in college now. So I ended up being a teacher. Ended up going to math. That was middle school math is what I went for. Just to wrap this story up, 8th grade, my life changed. My teacher by the name of Mrs. Simmons, who's still alive today, I talk about her all the time, ultimately changed my life. She took me out of a standard math class, was like, I think you can do algebra 1. Put me in an advanced class, changed my life. I got on the track with all the advanced kids, got access to the learning that I so richly wanted and deserved, but she had the power to do that. And so I took it upon my life to repay that, pay that forward. And I became an 8th grade math teacher and just started looking for kids that I'm just like, I'm going to push you like my teacher pushed me.
That is so good. And I know we've talked many, many times, and I don't think I've ever heard that actual story on your journey in education. So you were destined to be able to do this.
Yeah, bro.
It's interesting because I see it in your work. I see it in your passion, and I see it in your results. So it's beautiful to see. One of the things that you always talk about is this idea of brilliance. How do you define brilliance in the context of students, and why is believing in them so important?
Yeah, so I define brilliance. Well, let's start with the believing them is so important. So the belief that there's brilliance in every student is super important, because the opposite of that is going to be, I don't believe that kids are brilliant, or there are some certain kids that are not brilliant, or there are certain kids that education is not for because of whatever biases or mindsets that you may have. And so the foundational belief that a child can is something that I start with. It is the reason why literally stepping into a classroom where kids now, Kyle, I'm gonna be honest with you. I went into the classroom and the kids were in there fussing, they were cussing, they were playing around, they were wrestling. Like this teacher that was retiring, he was like, I have until December. I don't care. I'm just showing up to get my days in, and I'm just counting down. He had given up, and that's my introduction into education. And so I literally had to come in and be like, I don't care what I've seen. I know that these kids have the capacity to learn math. And I'm here to teach it. And I'm not a PE teacher. I'm not Coach O'Neill at the moment. I am Mr. James O'Neill, the math teacher. We're going to learn mathematics. And so starting with the fact that I know these kids can is the foundation, and brilliance looks different for everybody. And so sometimes we want to keep kids, and this is the case for me growing up, like brilliance wasn't for us. It was just like, do what the teacher did. So mimic the teacher. That's what mathematics was. You were brilliant if the teacher showed you one time and you got it, and that was good. Don't do it a different way. Don't have another approach that the teacher don't understand. No, we don't celebrate that. We celebrate conformity. Conform into the ways. And so I see Brilliance now as a great representation of where kids can be and the journey that they can be on. They don't have to get it as quick. And sometimes the connections are made later, but all of our students have a level of brilliance in them. And sometimes it's not, we don't take time to really dive in and to dig that thing up. But I start saying they're brilliant.
You took the time, though, and had the heart of harvest to be able to build these students up. What are some actionable ways that teachers can identify the unique strengths, similar to your teacher that did it for you, in other students as well, but then also nurture those strengths?
Yeah. That's a really good question, Kyle. You always ask good questions. Every time I come up here, I just got really good questions. So when I think about the strategies and the things that need to be done, I never, and I teach this in my business now, you can't give strategies to people that don't believe they work. So I can give, you can use Chat GPT, you can use any AI, you can come up with all the strategy in the world. If it is given to a person that do not believe that the students they have the ability and capability and the wherewithal to do it. If they don't believe it's possible for them, strategies fall prey to our belief system. And usually what we believe about kids happens in our classrooms. So I'll say that first before I'll talk about any of the things that I did, because when I started visiting classrooms, what I realized is, I'm taking a detour and I'm coming back. What I realized ultimately is a determining factor of why I felt like teachers like me, or teachers that approach mathematics or teaching like me, were successful, was their belief system. They knew that kids can do it. And so when I looked at the strategies, I think that one of the greatest strategies that I started to do is to make sense. And I'm talking to mathematics because I was a mathematics teacher. So to make sense of the math for me, and to ask myself, how did I make sense of this, and give that to my kids? So if it was a picture, if it was drawing a picture, that's how I made sense of it. If it was writing it out or seeing it in multiple representations, that's how I made sense of it. If it was literally a call and response or some kind of mnemonic device that I needed at the moment to just really anchor me in the understanding, that's how I make sense of it. So I literally tell teachers now, like, do you know why this makes sense? Because that's the greatest strategy that you can really get kids to understand. I ultimately believe it should make sense. And when it does, you can make the connections, you can see the representations. And so starting from that strategy alone is a game changer. I saw you about to say something.
No, I'm just saying that's powerful, because I think what I heard in that is you have to master it before your teaching students have to master it.
Oh, yes.
And you have to connect it to you before you're able to effectively allow students to connect to what you're trying to get them to connect to. And I think we miss that as educators when we're not going through and doing the work and doing the problems and doing the assignments prior to just giving the assignment. How can school leaders create a culture where that is the expectation, but then also supporting teachers to best support students in being able to have all of this hand in hand?
Yeah, that's brother. Let me tell you what I know now. So what I know now is that we call PLCs, or personal learning communities. We have so many different names all across the country. Everybody got to see anywhere. Our collaborative planning time. What that should look like is structure. And I don't know if leaders are just scared, especially if it's not a content that you teach. That we just have to layer structure. So no one should come to the PLC meeting have not done the lesson. It's a prerequisite.
Like perspective. I didn't think about it.
How are we going to talk about helping kids understand if we are now just opening up the lesson the first time, looking at what needs to be done? Like, and so when I think about helping kids and leaders, helping teachers, like you need to put in expectations and hold everybody accountable, and then explain why this method is better. So why would it be helpful for us to come to the lesson, already review the lesson during the problems before we start talking? Why would that be important? Well, it allows us to already come together with our thoughts. It allows us to not spend time combing through the lesson. And we always talk about time in general and how much time we lack. And so one of the key things that I always ask leaders, like, what is the expectation for teachers when they show up to these collaborative planning? Like, what is that? And one of the greatest expectations should be, we should have reviewed the lesson and have thoughts about what we're doing. What is the structure of the meeting? So after we review the lesson, is there a share? Is there like a comparative? Are there questions? Like, where are the things? Because this is what I've realized that makes great teachers, good teachers go from good to great, is the anticipation of misconceptions. So where do we think kids are gonna get stuck? Great question. What are we gonna do to bridge that gap to make sure they get to where they need to be, which is on grade level standards? Like, how do we make sure that we stay in the grade level work? And so that doesn't just happen unless you got a great teacher with great structures and like everybody respects them, but it needs to be spoken and structured in a way that this is the agenda. It's the same agenda. We do the math. We talk about the math. We anticipate student misconceptions, and then we scaffold into things that we're going to need. If we're doing group work, if we're doing a project, like these are the things that needs to be layered in our PLC meetings so that we can use the brilliance of everybody and we don't waste our time talking about why we're meeting. There's a reason why we're meeting.
There's a reason. I want to put a pin in that real quick. And I want to expand on this point because I've been in a lot of PLCs from a leadership side, but then also from a teacher side, and we're not maximizing that time.
Yeah.
What I recognize, though, is the ones that maximize that time are approaching this role not just as a job, but as a calling, which then layers it to be a mindset of how we approach not just this calling, but then also these meetings. What do you recommend someone listening right now? How do we go and change the mindset of our teams and of these individuals on our teams to want to do this work in preparation to being able to produce in front of students?
Yeah, that's good. I'll say an issue or a roadblock before I go into the answer. One of the roadblocks is like what you're saying, the calling. To me, it's always been personal. So like I now try to coach people into making it more personal. Like when my kids are not performing, I take it personal. That's on me. Like it's never been not on me. Now, if they didn't go home and study, I get it. There are sometimes that it's a relationship, it's a partnership. Like I just can't be like I showed up and I'm ready. I've even used back in the day. I got my education now. I already got mine. You know what I'm saying? Y'all, I'm here and y'all act like y'all don't want it. That ain't gonna. That's not gonna get anybody.
That's not gonna move anybody.
Let's go get this education. You know what I'm saying? That's not gonna move them towards that. And so, literally, reminding educators that I get it, y'all. We deal with a lot. We can't control everything, but you can control your classroom culture. You can control how much you allow students to speak. There's a lot of things that are in our control, but this is personal and it's a reflection of you. And when that is the case, I want to look good. Like I'm not trying to show up looking quote unquote bummy. And what quote unquote looking bummy and many times in education is like, I ain't prepared. I ain't got the lessons prepared. I don't got the printouts. I'm not structured in the classroom. I did half of the lesson. And so I'm just like, whatever. I'm speaking to the same kid every time in the classroom. And so I really don't care if nobody else gets it. Like, I'm okay. Well, they failed. That's on them. No. Is it on them? Like, I know we can't make somebody. But you can. I heard some keynote speaker say this, and I'll never forget it. He was like, you can take a horse to the water, but you can't make him drink. But he said, but you can make him thirsty.
Yes, the salt trick. I've heard
You can
that.
make him thirsty. Give him some salt and see how long he's
Yeah,
gonna sit there and not drink,
yeah.
right? And so he was like, "Be salty." Like that was his whole message. Was like, "You gotta be salty." And I'm just like, that's what I try to teach educators. Is yeah, there are some students that are difficult, that are dealing with some situations in life, and that are may not be ready to receive everything you're trying to give. But if you don't set yourself up to be inviting, if you don't let the lesson be inviting, or AKA become salty for the kids,
Yeah.
and they're never going to want what you have. And so, like, literally convincing us that first and foremost, it's personal. And would you show up like looking like this? No, because I want to look my best. I want to do my best. And then convincing and reminding teachers of what we can do to support our kids. At the end of the day, Kyle, there are cases where, and I used to, and because I take it so personal, I believe that I was good for everybody. You know, everybody will want to love me. I don't know why nobody would never want to get along with me, but that ain't wasn't the case, Kyle. That's not the case. There were some kids we could not, we just couldn't meet eye to eye. And I was not their person for that year. They needed somebody else. And I had to learn to release that and just be like, well, I'm not that person. And sometimes it's somebody else on the other team. And literally there are some kids that had to leave my classroom because of the simple fact that who I am and who they were, it was just so toxic in that environment. For them, it just became, they needed somebody else. And they didn't necessarily need me, even though how loving I wanted to be, how kind and caring and all this other stuff, it did not reach them. They needed something else. And so we have to be fine at times realizing that. But I'm gonna say this and shut up, Kyle. So many times I walk into the classrooms and like 70% of your kids are like, you ain't that person. That ain't a kid problem.
No, that's a you problem.
That's a you problem. Like, I'm talking about 2 or 3, like throughout the whole year.
I want to touch on that though. What are some obstacles? Because I believe at the core of every educator, they want to do their best. They want to empower students. But in your experience, what are some obstacles that educators run into or face in trying to empower students? And how do you coach them on overcoming some of those obstacles?
Yeah, I'll speak at the middle school level and beyond. So by the time a kid gets in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, specifically 8th grade, they have a mindset usually that they think is made up as far as what school looks like for them. Whether this is for me, the subjects are for me. I'm not a math person. I'm an ELA person. I'm an ELA person. I'm not a math person. I'm a math person. You know, like they have a fixed mindset sometimes around what's for them and who they are. And one of the obstacles is convincing the child that I know you have, and we don't realize this, years of data saying that you are not a good student. You are not a math person. You are not the ELA star. My job is to change that identity. And an obstacle is a child's history. It's their 7th grade teacher that they bumped heads with. It's the 6th grade grades that they got D's and F's on and somebody passed them on. It was in 5th grade where they got real sick and they missed 2 weeks of school and that put them behind. And so like one of the greatest obstacles is the journey of a child that hasn't been great. And then they show up in your classroom and now think they're thinking like, I'm going to be on the same train. I'm on the train that says school is not for me, but you get into one of our classrooms and we're just like, no, you're going to get off that train and you're going to learn that math, science, ELA, health, it can be for you. And so literally changing and shifting the mind, and it's science. Like if you're going to change somebody's mindset, they have to be bombarded with new experiences because they literally have the experiences of several years of this don't work. And then they end up in your class and you have to be like, but it can work and you can get it and you can be a better person. So that's the main obstacle that I see. And I'm going to tell you right now, that's hard to do. It takes a fortified belief in understanding that a child would want this over not being successful. And I ultimately try to teach educators and educate them on the science of our brain and understanding that trauma is real. Experiences, everything is trauma now, but not all things like really scientifically has been proven to be trauma. But we have negative experiences and we are literally predisposed to lean negatively. That's why the news, that's why everything knows that, like social media, everything, your feed is full of negativity because that's how we are more prone as a people to lean negatively. Well, if that's the case, then how can you get out of that? You need to be bombarded with more positive experiences over and over and over and over again. So what does your classroom culture look like? What does your calling on students look like? What are your expectations look like? What does your preparation look like? And so that's hard work. It is usually the hardest work that a teacher has to do when they are trying to be like, they didn't sign up to fail kids. We don't sign up to like have a on Jennifer Hudson's show talking about my teacher said I wasn't going to be nothing. I'm pretty sure that didn't sign up that day to tell that celebrity that you'll never make it, and whether they said it or not, well, that's what the child heard. Right. And so I don't believe somebody is signing up to be the hater of kids, like I'm going to doom your life and let this be the determining factor where you go. But really understanding that our kids are coming in with stories that may be opposite of your expectations. And then how are you going to help rewrite the story so that they live up to your expectations? Probably the greatest obstacle that I see in the classroom.
Let me ask you this, though. You're in the class, you're all things brilliance, all things excellence, and you're tapped in, you're fortified. But there's students in your class that aren't growing and progressing in the way that you would have hoped for them to grow and progress. Mm-hmm. How do you keep that belief, or what would be your advice to an educator tapping in and listening in to keep that belief for that student that just isn't, it's not clicking, they're not transitioning, they're not growing in the ways that you would want them to grow?
That's good, man. As soon as you started saying that, I started seeing kids. I literally saw their faces, and I saw their faces with me during lunch. I literally would pull kids after school. I would literally tell them, hey, I think, and if this is not the case, because economically, not every child could have a parent drop them off in the morning for tutoring. So like, that's the thing, like we're talking about, I have tutoring in the morning before school and they don't show up. Well, can they? What's the process of them getting there? Would they need to get a bus? The mom is already at work already. So like if a parent, and this is the belief, I believe a parent want their child to get the help that they need. Right. And I get it. Parents get frustrated. We all get frustrated. They were once a child, and many times they have a story that the parents that maybe have the most issues with school were the same kids that had the most issues in school. They're just now grown. And so they have a history as well. And so I saw kids when you said that, and I saw me reaching out to them more than many times that they will reach out to me, because I know, Kyle, you're not going to convince me. Like, nobody's not going to convince me of this. It feels better when you get it. Now, you may have to spend a little extra more time, and you might need to one-on-one with me or a small group with me. I might have to pull you out maybe sometimes out of your little healthy kids, your outside recess for the time moment. And that's not going to feel good because you want to go out and play. But it feels different. It's going to hit different when you show up to class the next day and you don't need my help. Autonomy is like second to none. That's dopamine letting me know, ooh, that feels good. I understand. I comprehend. I get it. That's addictive. And that's what the brain science tells you. Like, when you successfully get it and you get it on your own, you want more and more of that success. And so there were kids that did not get it the time I taught it in the classroom. And I knew it based upon the formative assessments, the data that I got, and I had to spend extra time with them. And I had to love them enough to say, hey, I know you want to do this fun thing right now. And I know school is not all about learning and academics, but you're going to not only struggle in my class, you're going to give up. And because you're so far behind right now, and you're not learning at the pace that's going to allow you to accelerate and feel good. And this is the main thing: change your mind of what's possible in my class. You're gonna have to spend a little bit more time with me. I'm gonna have to reach out to your parent and recommend tutoring or whatever, if that's something that they can afford. Or I'm gonna have to, I would sacrifice a little bit of my time. I'll eat lunch during my planning, and I'll take up some time to sit with you. And I'll say this, because I'm not trying to tell people not to have their own time, not to have your planning, like kill yourself. I shouldn't say that for your kids, Lord. Just totally go and sacrifice all your life for your students. That's not what I'm saying. But there are certain sacrifices that come with a heart that says, like, I want this child to get it. And there's an energy that comes with that, because you're literally fighting for sometimes the lives or the advancement of certain kids, because they're just not getting in there, and they just needed extra time. And so honestly, that's what that looked like for me.
I find it so powerful in what you said, and I can literally see children too. And I see me in the ELA classroom working with students in Monroe. And I don't think it's a lot to ask anybody listening or any educator to sacrifice. And how I would sum up what you just communicated was take it personal.
Yeah.
Like, if you're really invested in this work and you're really invested in these children, then you should be taking it personal that students aren't learning. You should be taking it personal that students are sleeping in your class. You should be taking it personal that students don't want to engage in these types of lessons. And student scores are indicative of your performance. You're the problem. And until we understand that we're the problem, we won't be able to effectively create solutions for students. How does the role of parents and families and communities play in supporting this idea of creating brilliance within these students?
Yeah. So there are many problems our kids face, and not saying that we are the reason as to why our kids are not performing at the level that we wish them to perform. That we're clearly not saying that. We clearly are saying that there is a problem if you don't take it personal. And if you don't take it personal, you won't be a problem solver at all. And so when I think about parents and their roles, like, I talk to teachers and I say stuff, and it hits them a different way, and they're triggered by some of the stuff I say. But ultimately, we want to, this is what the teacher does sometimes, and in a mindset that you're overwhelmed and you're just at your wit's end. You got to blame somebody, and it feels bad to blame yourself. Okay. Exactly. So what we start to do, we blame systems. Then we blame parents. Then we blame kids. We blame a lot of things. And what the research, even Hattie's research around school-related factors, the greatest indicator of a child's success that is school-related factors is the teacher. That is the greatest indication of whether a child is going to succeed. Now, could there be other factors? Yes, there are other factors at play in a child's life. There's the community. When they leave home, their community, their support system, their parents, food, lack of access, all those things. But if we're talking about just school-related factors, the greatest influencer of a child's success is the teacher. You got to own that. We got to own that. And then we can say the greatest factor for a child's success outside of school is the parent. And they have to own that, and we have to own that for them as well. When the culture of Black boys that I built in the school that I was in at the time, I built a club that was, I called it Aftermath, and it was specifically geared towards Black boys that had come into the school at a high level. And by the time they got to middle school, they kept dropping. I'm just like, y'all, this don't make any sense. Data clearly says that y'all can do the math. Why is it that by the time y'all get into middle school, y'all are like falling through the cracks? So I started a club to really support them. And when I started interviewing the boys and started talking to them, like, what's the greatest reason why you do well in school? 100% of them said it's because of my parents. Like, outside of them having great teachers and the school that they went to, those boys said, I'm on the honor roll because it wasn't intrinsic for them yet. They're not old enough to like own it up to like that. It was like, because my mom, she don't play.
She ain't playing.
She ain't playing by my grades.
Mhm.
I got an A in math and I got all A's because my dad, he don't play with me by my grades. Like, there's an expectation of my house. And so that is important. And it's the greatest indicator of how well a child is going to do that's outside of school, that is going to ultimately influence that child for the rest of their life. Parenting is important, and partnering schools, teachers, partnering with parents, because Kyle, this is one thing I understood. Parents loved me. And the reason why they love me is because I love their child. And the reason why I love talking to parents is because I want their child to succeed. And so when a parent talks to me and a child goes home to tell part of the story of the experience that they had in my class, parents would be like, nah, listen, and this is the thing. I know as your mom, you lie to me. There is no way for someone that ain't raised you, birthed you, breastfed your behind, bought clothes for you, feed you, that you're not going to lie on them too. And so they would hit me up and be like, Mr. O'Neal, what's the rest of this story? And you know why they trusted me? Because they understood as an educator, I wasn't out to get their child. I was for their child. And I presented myself in a way that said, I want to partner with you to make sure that your child is successful. And so parents, there's some healing that needs to go there. I know they were once a student, and many of them have negative experiences. And so they're looking at a teacher through the eyes of their 7th grade eyes, where Mr. Joe embarrassed them. And so they're looking at me as Mr. O'Neal. I'm another Mr. Joe, but I'm not. Right. And there's some things they got to process to get out of them in order for them to really partner with educators and leaders to make sure their child is successful.
James, you have 60 seconds. You share a message with every educator in the state of North Carolina. What do you say?
I say to every educator, challenge what you believe kids are capable of. When you believe that they're capable, you will plan for them to be capable. You will insert yourself so that they're capable. You will hold expectations that will reveal that you believe that they're capable. Examine your mindset. Your mindset speaks to your practices. Your practices speaks to those kids' results. And if you get your mind right, I promise you'll be more solution-oriented as far as what you need to do to support those kids that you love in that classroom.
You know, you are the first person that I've asked that to that actually went under 60 seconds. You my guy. You my guy. And then everyone said, I know that was longer than 60 seconds. Where can we find you? Where can we support you? And how can we continue to just help you accomplish the goals to be able to ensure students are achieving brilliance?
Yeah. So social media at Mr. James O'Neal, Oneal, or you can remove the dot and find me. Website is mrjamesoneal.com. And so you can find my work, you can find videos, you can request to have me come to your school, whether speak or do professional development. Love to partner with you. You can find me all of those places.
James, I appreciate you so much, brother. We got to get together when you're back in town. Anybody listening right now, I want you to rewatch this episode and begin to take it personal. I want you to instill a belief, not only in your students, but first in yourself, that students can learn, students can achieve brilliance, and that students need you to be able to show up at your very best on a daily basis. I want you to believe in this work, and I want you to believe that you have the power to be able to influence children's lives for the rest of their lives. But before you do any of that, I want you to ask yourself this week, what type of culture am I spreading? The energy you bring is the culture you create. Make yours worth catching.